Narrative media, my true love. Be it Disco Elysium, Elder Scrolls, Paranesi, Goodnight Pom Pom, all stories I heavily enjoyed, changing the way I identified with myself and the world around me. You like my hat? It's summer, so it's a bit uncomfortable, I won't lie. Anyway, stories invoking passion, art, and friends. Narrative media has grown beside humanity, from myths, from religions all around the world, to fables, to storybooks. And as an artist, and considering my niche, I'm assuming you're an artist too, more likely than not, I'm sure most of us can go on and on forever about our favorite works that just changed everything for us, or at least was our proverbial heroine. Stories that greatly impacted us. But where the contention lies, oftentimes, is in the messaging and interpretation of the story. And in our environment nowadays online, radical beliefs have become commonplace. The louder you scream, the more entertaining, which means the algorithm is chewing on that dick of yours crazy style if you are radical on either ends of the spectrum. Which means the average viewer nowadays is just bombarded with thoughts and prayers, baby, because, oh my gods, the internet nowadays is definitely a bit louder than it was. I remember when, the internet was, a radical centrist, which wasn't that good, because they were so racist. Not saying centrism makes you racist. I'm not racist. Anyways, all of that has changed the status quo of political views on the internet, I believe. And I want to talk about today the line between over-politicizing media and rightful deconstruction. I'm Saba, Black Sheep, have you any soul? No sir, but today, we're getting political. Again, oh my gods, dude, I played Disco Elysium once and suddenly got weirdly into political philosophy. That's right, I'm cringe. I got into politics because of a fat, sad, loser old man. God, they get me every time. Dude, you can Pavlov me into liking anything as long as there's just this disgusting dilf. Just some absolute loser that wants to harm himself. That's above the age of 40. I'll subscribe. That being said, I'm not a politics major, meaning take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm not educated. I'm just a human with two eyes that can observe the world around me and make conclusions. Thus, literally like everyone else. So, But before we get into all of that, consider joining our Patreon, where we have Discord exclusive streams once a week, where I draw on stream whatever you want. And I mean whatever. Maybe there might be some restrictions as to what those are. I guess you'll just have to figure out. Give me money. Or just joining the 17 plus Discord server to meet a bunch of cool artists and get your art in the next video. But as always, back to the video. Politics is often just philosophy but put into practice. At least political ideologies themselves. So naturally, yes, many stories have political undertones, but there's definitely different degrees. There would be a difference between being reflective of a political ideology and something being political propaganda, and the line seems to be often simplified in today's climate of political extremism, where I often see philosophical messaging and metaphors be turned into something to be placed on the political compass. Human life is extremely complex and amoral. To place it on a political map often simplifies the deeper artistic expression. Disco Elysium is an extremely politically dense game, but it more so examines the philosophical nature of it. The game criticizes all sides of the political sphere, yet the way the Phantom engages with the media, I believe, simplifies the reality of the narrative. It is often seen as the communist game. And in some sense it is, given the creators of Disco Elysium thanked Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels while receiving an award for the game. That being the writers of the Communist Manifesto. However, the game itself criticizes communism quite a bit, but has almost a nostalgic love for it, an ideal never fully realized, a watercolor impression of a reality that the world is just a tad too cruel for. The game itself is not shy about pointing out the often derealized nature of communists. When you are prompted to take on communism as a part of your character's identity, it tells you this.
Hey, psst. Yes, you. Word on the street is you're ready to start building communism again. You keep saying things like, down with the bourgeoisie, eat the rich, sodomize the landowners, impale all people who have more than 25 real in their pocket, literally murder all human beings regardless of their political beliefs. That kind of stuff. Funky style, very funky. So tell me, do you have any questions before we fire up the big communism builder, or do we get right down to it? Failure. It's about failure. Of course you do. You are failure. You are communism. Absolutely vanquished, beaten, curb stomped, shat on, while everyone else is out partying, having a callous laugh. You will reverse the fortune of the workers of the world. You alone, against every living thing, against every human alive. 800 trillion real in the hands of an impossibly well-organized ruling class. Towering city blocks of bankmen who have the ears of prime ministers. Million-headed armies of nations and the love of your own mother. You against the atom, the charm and the spin, where the whole world failed. Matter failed to bend to human will. Human will failed to get out of bed and tie its laces. You alone, single-handedly, will rebuild the dreams of the working class. You are the last communist. Now get to work, comrade. Oh yeah, get the firing squads and the animal wagons ready. Too late to back out now. You can't make an omelette without breaking a few million eggs.
It is a communist critique on communism. The devastating but apparent realization that our world is flawed and how stagnant the ideology can be, as it's a hope, but oftentimes inaction. However, how I often see fans of Discolesium interacting with the political messaging of the game seems innately rudimentary. The game itself, at least from my understanding, displays all political ideologies as flawed to some degree, but are less a teller of some actual well-formed idea for our society, rather representative of who we are as people, our life experiences, and what we identify within ourselves. The asshole fascist racist that lies to you still takes care of his older friends, lets them stay with him free of charge, and spends time with them out in the cold reeds just to make sure his ailing friend has company. The socialist mob enforcer that strung up a man in a tree and treats your player character like crap still cares deeply about his friends in his town. He wants to protect vulnerable people in his community. The game displays the human condition with such rawness and understanding, but I often see fans of this game demeaning other fans that even lean centrist politically, or are on the neoliberal spectrum. And yes, the game has a nostalgic love for communism, but it feels like people don't really realize the main character's companion in the game is a moralist, a centrist. Kim supports the status quo, upholding the centrist coalition that is in power, or how Harry Dubois' ex is deified in the image of the mother of moralism and the creator of the centrist coalition. Of course, the latter is supposed to be symbolic of the power Dolores Day's legacy has over Revachol, and by extension Dora, his ex, has over him, loving him then leaving him for a better life. Dolores Day and Dora's stories are parallels in more ways than just this. This within itself is some critique on the centrist coalition in power, yet also sympathize with it to some degree, as Dora had many good reasons to leave Harry. He is a radically unstable person, and given the full context of Elysium, the centrist coalition, though not perfect, has intentions to stabilize and aid. the poster boy of dove foreign policy. It's clear the writers don't hate centrist political ideologies. I find it interesting when I see Discolesium fans criticize those that agree with centrist sentiment, yet woefully ignore that some of their favorite characters fall within that camp, and wouldn't make that same critique of the character. Almost like subconsciously they think the character has more depth than an actual person. But the only difference here is they haven't seen this person enough to know their story and get attached to it the way they have with their favorite character. I'm not saying centrism is always a good thing. Over-alignment to the middle ground can breed stagnation, which the game openly criticizes. But as it criticizes communism, neoliberalism, ultraliberalism, fascism, etc., every ideology is the projection of a character's story, of a sense of self, not a sound political system. And I'll often see this type of behavior across the board with many stories, people turning the nuances of the story into a sole political message. Y'all remember the second season of Arcane? And this scene in particular. Spoilers for Arcane, second season. Go to the timestamp here if you don't want to see this. Hi, post-editing Saba here. I was unable to show the clip because of copyright, despite it only being a 1-minute clip, and they wanted to take all the monetization from the video from it. So instead of showing you the clip, I will just tell you the speech, and I will leave the clip in a link down in the description if you want a more literal example. Setting frame. Viktor is dying, a war is happening. Here is the speech. I understand now the message behind, within the pattern, the reason for our failures in the commune. The doctor was right. It's inescapable. Humanity, our very essence, our emotions, rage, compassion, hate, two sides of the same coin, inextricably bound. That which inspires our greatest good is also the cause of our greatest evil. This scene is beautifully done. It is clearly the turning point for Viktor as a character coming to this revelation that humans' value system is innately attached to suffering, that the very thing that brings us to our highest highs is the same pushers that harbor our lowest lows. It is a philosophical sentiment, found in many cultures, from Buddhism's message of all human experience has its origins in suffering, to the concept of Satan, which is the Hebrew word for the adversary. Humans deriving meaning from suffering is a philosophical sentiment. I had a friend that told me they disliked this speech because it was a conservative dog whistle. I was utterly baffled by this take, as this was a commentary on the human condition, not a political dog whistle. Yes, a nihilist approach that all is suffering, so I'm gonna do nothing, often is used to excuse inaction, which results in political and social stagnation. But how the story framed the speech wasn't even nihilistic in nature, which made me even more confused by this takeaway. Viktor isn't saying inaction is the solution to this dilemma, more so that action is the only solution. That human suffering is beautiful in its fullness, that we as humans have nothing to do but act, otherwise we wouldn't even be human. And given the rest of that season, you see that in action, that without suffering, we are nothing. Just thinking that this person I know couldn't hold both realities at the same time, that being introspecting on human nature being driven by suffering, and that it doesn't inherently make that drive not a good vehicle for action. Pointing something out doesn't mean it's being criticized, but that introspecting on that facet of society has philosophical and social merit. Understanding the self and the greater functions of humanity's value system allows you to understand and connect with the world around you. It isn't a centrist or conservative dog whistle to beckon inaction, but to better understand the action to begin with. Now, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of stories that push an explicitly political messaging. So it isn't always crazy to draw parallels and point out dog whistles, but I do think the online radicalization of politics is negatively affecting all ends of the political compass when it comes to deconstructing and understanding narrative media on a deeper level than a puddle. I hope I don't need to say this phenomenon isn't all-encompassing. Let me know what you think in the comments, or share some stories on this topic. That's all I have for today, folks. If you like my art, consider commissioning me. You can reach out to me on Discord, Instagram, and Blue Sky, all in the link tree and description. You got work tomorrow, or school, or getting strangely political again. But as always, don't dream about wheat-based byproducts. Moi, je m'appelle mademoiselle Noire, et qu'on va pour la voix,